Hey everyone, what's a good word? Are you ready to listen today? Because not only will you get a chance to listen to the podcast, but you're going to be listening to the one and only Colin, the listener Smith out of the UK. Colin is a person that truly enjoys listening skills. He's a specialist at listening, and he has a passion for changing the way the world listens. I know you're going to enjoy this podcast. Think about how we can apply it in our lives, in our business, because listening is going to help develop great relationships. Now, let's listen into the podcast with Colin Smith.
Are you looking to improve your sales skills without compromising your values? Welcome to Sales Made Easy, a podcast for business and personal growth. Join Harry Spate, author of Selling with Dignity, your formula for life-changing sales results, as he hosts sales experts and business owners who share their journeys of personal growth and business success without resorting to pushy sales tactics. Now, here's your host, Harry.
Colin, welcome to the Sales Made Easy podcast. What is the good word, my friend?
The good word is listening. It's got to be.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I'm so excited. So I was just going to sit here and listen, but that would be difficult. So the challenge with listening for a lot of us, Colin, is we listen and then we feel like we need to speak as soon as someone finishes. So I think that's a challenge I see a lot. And why don't we start there as to why that may not be the best form of listening?
Well, thanks, Harry. I'm looking forward to being here with you. You're right in that I think most people believe that they are very good listeners. And if you did that classic hands up who thinks they're better than average listeners, most people would say yes. I also follow that with another question, which is, so keep your hands up if in the last 2 weeks, somebody has said to you, thank you for listening. Most people with their hands down. And then they go, well, surely hearing and listening is the same thing, but it's not. So we hear without any intention to hear at all. So you and I, deep in a conversation in a busy restaurant, and somebody says, hey, Harry, you're going to pick it up. I may not, but you will, because it's about keeping you safe and you don't have to do anything. Whereas listening is intentional. It's active. I have to intend to listen. So that makes it very different. Oh, so it is different. So how do I learn? Right. So I've been doing all the wrong things. I've been just hearing, not listening. Yes. So what's the difference? And I do a very simple exercise using a piece of music. It's only about 30 seconds long. Get them to just listen to it, which they do. Then the next time, listen to the guitar and the piano, which they do. Third time, listen to the vocals. And then the fourth time, I say, just relax and just be with the music. Let it come through you. Bask in the music. And people accuse me of changing the music. It feels different. We're listening to it now, not hearing it. And when we do that in a sales environment, you start to pick up on all of the subtle energies that your prospect or client is sharing. So it might not be the words you're picking up, which you will, but it's also, what are they feeling about it? When they talk about a competitor, what is the subtle differences in there that you're picking up? Actually, he's really not happy with his competition, or he really is happy with his competition. I'm picking that up. And likewise, when we do get into that space of really listening to understand rather than listening to reply, they will tell us more. And in fact, somebody was saying to me today that when he'd gone to an event, and as part of the event, he went from table to table and he just talked to all of the people on each of the tables. And everyone, I think it was his daughter's friends. That's right. It was his daughter's friends. And she said, Dad, you went down a storm with them. And he went, what? She said, yeah. They loved you and they trusted you, all because he listened. They don't know much about him.
Mm.
They didn't find out. But the more he sat with them and listened to them, the more they opened up and shared more things. And in sales, what can happen is the prospect will lean across and say, I shouldn't really say this to you, but, and it comes out. And when they've explored all of their thinking, then they're more likely to listen to you.
Great stuff, Colin. So much to go on with this. So, where do I start? First of all, I love music. I probably have never been a great listener of music, maybe a hearer of music, but now I'm really challenging myself going forward to dive in a little bit deeper and see if I can separate the instruments and then bask in
Yes.
music. It sounds beautiful. So, one of the things that you mentioned in this is the feeling safe.
Hmm.
This is, I'm not sure where I've been all my life, but I've never really looked at listening and providing a place of safety, right? I've always felt like trust is there, right? That you had to listen in order for people to understand you and feel that you could be trusted. But you bring up the word safe. What, why do you bring up that word?
So where this has come from for me is the work of Amy Edmondson, and she's a Harvard professor, and she's written a lot on the subject of psychological safety. Google also did a report, which they call Project Aristotle, where they analyzed the success of their projects over the last 2 or 3 years. And the results were not what they were expecting. So in terms of their teams, they were expecting, you've got to have the right sort of people, the right balance, chemistry, and all those sorts of things. The number one thing that came through was psychological safety. The feeling that I can say, well, the way I shorten it is to speak up or speak out. So I can share what's really going on for me. It's not about not conflicting or anything like that, because there is still conflict in those, but it's the way it's handled. People aren't bullied, aren't belittled, aren't made to look small and to feel as though their words and their thinking is not valued. So the more we can create the safety, the more people will open up, and therefore the more successful the the team will be. So, for example, in a sales environment, you often get the sales manager who's been around the block a number of times, should we say. He's got the new people in, and they try and tell him all the reasons that he wants to hear for why they want this prospect on the list or not, why they didn't win the business or not. And they never get to a place which is safe enough for them to say, this is what's really going on. And maybe it is simple as, I don't know enough about this selling thing. I'm not feeling confident enough when I go in. I talk too much. What can we do? How can I get around it? And vice versa. And, you can get others to share their ideas with each other because it's safe to do so. I'm okay to put my hand up to say, I don't know. When you get those going on, then it becomes a better place to be. And it's the same in personal relationships. If it's safe, I'll say what I'm feeling and say what I'm thinking, knowing that it will be okay. We can work with it. Does that make sense in the sales world for you?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I could just think over the years as you're speaking. Of course, I was listening while you were speaking. All right. I just want to make that very clear for our listeners. But this idea, I'm just thinking back, is like, what are the things that I've said where someone didn't feel safe? Right. I could have been in a situation where someone was struggling and they were afraid to tell me what was really going on. So they didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
And I was thinking it could be something related to a technique, style, whatever. And they could have been dealing with something completely different at home that they didn't want to bring up. You name it, right? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Exactly. Especially the bit about at home, because salespeople traditionally are macho, gung ho, we're winning, all of this. And to hear about the fact that I've had a real bust up with my wife and it's upsetting me, that's not going to go down well. But if it is a safer environment, then you say, okay, let's see what can I do as in you to help support them? Because your results are governed by their success as a sales manager or a sales director.
Yeah, I love it. I was thinking of sometimes people will be telling you about their weekend and going on, and you're looking at them and it's like, why are you speaking to me about all of this? And the answer is because I asked them how their weekend was without really expecting them to answer more than great.
Ah,
Right.
yes. Yeah.
So, some people are really starved for this attention.
Yes. Yes.
Others, like,
Yes.
when we're busy and in work mode, which I've said only about a million times to my wife, I'm in work mode right now. Can't really listen. And I know I've done that on the job, but yet people are looking to us to kind of snap out of it, right? And be a good listener at that moment. Is that accurate?
Yes. We've got to a space where there is an expectation that just because you've you've seen me, like your wife's come into your office, that you're going to be ready to listen to me now. And if it's safe for both sides, be this in the office or at home, then you can say, right, unless it's like burning urgent now, then could we make it 10 minutes?
Hmm.
And the deal is that you've got in 10 minutes, I'm going to go down. I give you my full attention. We can do that with children, helps them understand boundaries. We can do it with our partners. We can do it in the workplace. Love to talk to you. Very happy to, unless it's burning urgent and you need me now, give me half an hour and then I'll come and find you. And I will. And that's the deal. You own it now. You've got to go and find them and you'll have that conversation. And then you've got to demonstrate that you really are going to listen to them. But you're absolutely right. The expectation is like email, isn't it? Back and forth. I've sent you an email and you've not responded. Why? Why have you not?
Yeah.
And we perpetuate it.
Yeah.
So typically what happens, they come to see you. Can you listen? And okay. And you're in the middle of something. So you've lost that, but you still want to go back to it, but you try and give them your attention, but it's not very good because you're a bit pissed off that they've interrupted you actually.
Yeah. So really it works on both sides is what you're
Yes.
saying, right? So
Yeah.
say we'll pick on me. I want to be a great listener. Someone comes into my office, wherever, and they say, well, I've got this challenge. I've got this sales challenge. And so I drop what I'm doing. I listen. And then because I'm rushed, I don't really coach. I just give answers.
Beautiful. Yes, exactly.
And so over the years, I realized that I trained my salespeople to be using me as Google instead of figuring out on their own. I became the answer man
Yep.
and I'd go do this, but then I got to get back to what I'm doing because this is the life I chose. But there's really a much better way of handling that. It sounds like what you just
Oh,
described.
the situation in that one is, let's say you've done that break. You've got, look, I'm in the middle of something. Let me come back to you. So you come back to them and say, okay, so tell me what the problem is. And then the first thing you say is, okay, so I understand the problem now. It's this, this, and that. They go, yeah, that's exactly it. What do you think? Because if they come up with the answer, which they probably will, it's going to be owned by them rather than them taking on your answer, even though your answer may well be the same. The fact they've thought it through means they'll take it on. Equally, it could be they've come up with a completely answer and you go, oh my goodness, that's better than I would have come up with. And so they win. Often CEOs go into a board meeting and say, guys, girls, we got a problem. Here's what I think is the solution. What do you think? Not many of them are going to be saying something different. But if he says, we've got a problem, I'm engaging all of you people because you're the bright people, the brains here. I really want to know what you think. And I'm going to be asking each of you what you think. And I don't want you to just come up with the same answers. Really think, because we've created a safe place for you to say what you think. And one by one, they go around and they share what they think. And as a good CEO, if one of those answers that you decide is the one to choose, and it happened to be the one that you would have said, you don't need to own it. You go, Joe, we're going with your idea. I think it's the best all round. Let's go with it. And if it succeeds, as it probably will, let Joe have the accolades. You don't need them.
That's so funny. I mean, there seems to be a tendency where we want that approval and say, well, I was thinking the same thing, which
Yeah.
really adds nothing. But that's where humility and losing the ego a little bit can
Yes.
do. Let the other person bask in the moment of glory because that person probably doesn't get enough of it anyway, right?
You're absolutely right. We don't get anything. We don't get enough of that. We don't get enough affirmation or appreciation for who you are. We get feedback about what I do, but nothing about how I am being. And we don't get heard enough. We don't get listened to enough.
So it sounds like a lot of therapy could be going on in the workplace where you're looking at the whole person that's working with you. And I say that completely in jest, but right where we're trying to, you know, where we have a job, we have business to do, but yet we want to get through the day by helping others get through their day
Yeah.
and right and kind of be a team thing. So this isn't something where you just stop work altogether and say, well, let's go have a chat for an hour and let's really get down into your problems and then provide some guidance, is it?
No, I think it depends, of course. All right. And so I think what we're doing is we're coaching the whole person. And in order for you to coach the whole person, you need to understand the whole person. And in the course of the conversations that you have with them over time, you're building up a much better picture of what they're really like. And therefore, you can tailor as the manager or the director, how do I work with this person? It's going to be different to this person, to this person, to this person. And yeah, some could say it's therapy, some could say it's counseling. I think it's just good coaching
Mhm.
because I think that the role of the manager is to support the people above them. And I say above them, I mean the people that work for them. It's just, because your salespeople, they're the ones that are interacting with the customer. People say, the CEO says our customers are the most important. When was the last time they saw a customer? The ones that really see the customers are the salespeople or the frontline people. How do we make them the most important? And how do we listen to them for what they're seeing and hearing and feeling and sensing? Encourage that. And we might start getting the right sort of information. IBM almost went down the tubes because they didn't hear. They weren't listening to what was coming back. Everyone was telling them what they thought they wanted to hear. Kodak, they were in the prime position to deal with the digital world for cameras. They didn't. They didn't want to hear it. And so many others have gone. I mean, it's a bit exaggeration, agreed, but you know what I mean. We're not listening to what's really going on.
Yeah. So you bring up sales. Can you give us a little background about your sales history?
Yeah, I spent about 15 years in a sales role, both for a software company, a services company, a communications company, and a consultancy. And it was at a point after 10 years where looking back, I think I should have gone into customer service, but they made the role that I was in a customer service role, and then they made it a sales role. And from that moment, for about 20 years, I was branded as a salesperson. And I think the thinking I had was very different then. I just wasn't fit to be a top set. I was okay, but I wasn't your archetypal salesperson. But I've been on many sales courses, and yeah, the way I was successful towards the end of my sales part of it was that I learned to listen better to the clients. I know that now.
Yeah. Well, because it's so rarely spoken about in sales,
Yeah.
right? Knowing your presentation, knowing your product, knowing everything, right, is always about speaking. And I don't know if it came from you, but I read somewhere or heard somebody say once that we're taught all our lives how to speak, but we're never taught really how to listen. And
Yeah.
that is so true in sales.
Yeah, absolutely. The presentation is revered. The speaker is revered, not the listener. And what do customers tell us more often that they want? I just wish the salesperson would listen to me. What's that classic one, isn't it? So that, you've got the chance to meet the MD and you say to him something along the lines of, so tell me the top 3 things that keep you awake at night. Yeah. And you've asked the question. I mean, there's lots of different versions of it, but you've asked the question. How long typically will it be before the salesperson has interrupted the MD's thinking and taken the conversation somewhere else? It's within 10 or 15, 20 seconds. But the MD's got to go, right, okay, if I'm going to answer this properly, which are the problems that keep me awake at night? Right. Is that one, that one, that one, that one? Yeah. And then which order? Which are my top 3? But they don't give them that pleasure because it might be really useful for him to do that exercise because
Yeah.
nobody's ever given him time to do it
And
because they've interrupted him.
that's right. It's so true. I was just thinking that some executives would look at a salesperson and say, "Why are you asking me those questions? They have nothing to do with your product." Right? And they pigeonhole the salesperson
Yeah.
into a product person, and that's really not where most of us want to be in that space, right? We want to be consultative, which requires some listening.
You want to be a trusted business partner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they tell you the problems that are going on and you go, okay, based on that, this is where we can help you best. But in order for you to be listened to, they need to have felt listened to first, I think.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I would agree with you. Um, so just thinking throughout the day in the workforce, there's a lot of communication that's going back and forth. Is that Is that something that you feel like we should address, or is that just normal everyday stuff that goes back and forth that doesn't really matter? I'm not sure if that question is
Yeah.
clear, but it's just
It,
the incidental speaking, saying something, someone does it, they move on without anything.
it's not the clearest of questions. I'll be
No, okay,
honest.
great. Thank you.
No,
Let's do it over.
do you want to do it over? Yeah. Do
Yes.
that one
Okay.
over it.
So what I'm getting at is if someone wanted to be a better listener, we're not necessarily saying this includes every little conversation that comes up during the day where there could be just some task that's assigned, just some quick response, and we just move on and just get back to what we're doing versus having a really in depth conversation.
Great question.
It's
The,
better
the
than the first round.
Yeah, better than the first round. What I would say is something I say a lot, which is it depends. So the if all you ever did as a salesperson in the office or salespeople in the office is just sit and listen to each other, nothing's going to get done, which isn't going to help. So it's almost getting a sense of this needs to be a more deeper conversation, or done well, we come to that person with the question, I'd really love it if so give you an example. A friend of mine who I work very closely with, he came in one morning and he said, Colin, can you just listen to me for about 10 minutes? Because I need to articulate what I'm saying, what I'm thinking. Once I've said it, I can then process it. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't say anything. Went on and on and on, stopped. He said, great, I've got it. Thank you. And off he went. So there are times when we can be really clear about what we want from the other person. Could you give me a quick answer on this? I've had a I've thought it through. I can't make the decision. It's got to be this, this, or this. What do you think? Yeah, we'll have that. But there are other times where we've got a little bit more time. We've got a little bit more leeway. You can see that they're troubled. What's going on? And then you can have that conversation. So it is depends.
Yeah. I like the
I think,
answer.
yeah.
Uh,
It can't be. Otherwise you'd never get anything done.
right. Right. And then you could pick up something too, right? Where they're a person, you could tell by their face, you could tell by the tone of their response that you
Yes.
might catch up later at lunch or, on the ride home, you're making a phone call or something like that.
Yes. So there was an instance where I met up with a friend of mine for lunch and at a conference, because later that day, he and I were going to be working on a workshop. So we were going to facilitate a session at the end of the day in this conference. And I just literally, as I was arriving, I'd got a phone call from somebody else, which really upset me. And I said, I've got a real problem because I don't know what I'm struggling now because my head is somewhere else. He said, do you want to talk about it? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. So I shared what the problem was. And he said, would you like my thoughts on it? And I said, yeah, that'd be really valuable. He did. I said, got it. I think I know what to do now. Made a call, resolved the issue, job done, able to focus and concentrate. If I'd not been able to, if I wasn't feeling safe enough with this person, I wouldn't have said it. He would have been thinking, Colin's not right today. Are you off? And they say, you all right, Colin? I go, yes, yes. And you go, I knew it. I knew it. There was something. And so there would be this distance and therefore we wouldn't be able to work as well together. So it's those little things that make a big difference in a team.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if can I ask where this desire to be a better listener came from with you? I mean, was there a aha moment somewhere in your life you said, you know what, I need to work on this, or was it a gradual thing?
I, looking back, and I've that sort of question has been asked to me of me before. And the sense is that it's a gift that I've had for a long time, but because it's a gift of ours, our own, we don't notice it. And it was over lunch with someone, and she said, you do realize you're a really good listener. And I went, what? And she said, yeah, you're a really good listener. And she said, I think there is something there that you could take forward. And so we looked at the idea of the listening coach, but the idea of the listening coach was a fix it. It felt like fixing. And so we came up with the idea of the listener, and it's like, I like that. And that's where it started. And the next part of the journey was to find out from someone I wrote to and said, look, this is what I'm thinking of doing in these areas. He said, have you read Nancy Klein's Time to Think? And then I went and read it, and it was like, oh my God, this is exactly where the space I want to be in. And so I've done some training in that very space as well. So some of the things I've shared come directly from the idea of time to think. And some is from a whole range of other sources, including one who's a hostage negotiator, international hostage negotiator, because he gets to the point where the customer goes, yes, sorry, the hostage taker says, yes, you're right, or you've got it. Then you know that he understands that you understand him. Then you can influence them. And the key, what I would say just on the final piece on that, is the intention that the salesperson has, or in his case, the hostage negotiator has to be good all the way through. Because if not, the client, or in this case, the hostage, will see through it. He'll see through your all the things you're saying are not because you mean it, but because you want to get something from me. End of. Whereas if it's true that actually I'm genuinely doing this because I believe that we offer will solve your needs, et cetera, then they're in a much better position when you've understood them to be influenced by where you take them next.
So good. Uh, I love it. So
Thank
in sales, I frequently talk about providing value to your prospect client. And especially if they're sitting on the fence, maybe they've had their proposal, they're, on the 1 yard line in American football, if you will, ready to score, ready to bring it home, and then they stall. And this is where I suggest to people, instead of asking for the paperwork 1,000 times, why don't you find different ways to provide value? Like, what are some ways we can provide value for this person? Because they'll understand that our touch is also a nudge without necessarily nudging them or without, doing the stereotypical, are you ready to sign? Can I pick up the paperwork? All of these
Yes.
things people resort to. I said they'll get it just by us doing something that brings value to them. They're going to connect the dots.
Yep.
But as soon as we show that we want the order above all else, that's when they'll see through it, sort of like the hostage, right?
Yes.
A hostage
Yes.
holder says, okay, you played me, you did pretty well, but
Yeah.
now your colors are there. So now I'm going to ghost you even more, whatever. Thoughts?
I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I was going down the right path then on that. So,
Yes. I think it kind of, what's that phrase? Startles the horses. It's, you see the situation in relationships where people want to get somewhere or to get something. That's what it's about. Whereas in a sales situation, it might be that we don't get the order this meeting,
right.
the next meeting, it will come because we're moving the customer along and we're doing the right things with them. And as you say, each time we add a little bit more value until they, they come to you and they say, I've got the order. You don't even need to ask it. I know it's not quite as black and white as that, but it becomes much more, they want to give you the order rather than you asking for it.
Right. Yeah.
But again, there are situations where sometimes the customer plays the game to make you ask for it, but we know that.
Yeah. That's true. And that's all part of, listening to different tones and so forth, that where you can pick up
Yeah.
this, right? So you mentioned the book that you suggest that I read. Now I'm going to have to list. Could you say it one more time so I could make sure? There you go. Okay. Time to think. Beautiful. Very clear. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And it's listening to ignite the human mind. So it
Yeah.
genuinely is about encouraging the other person to think better by the quality of my attention and my listening.
Yeah. It's fantastic. So, as far as what you're doing today, Colin, how is your business tied into listening?
It really is the three areas that I work with, which is, as I may have said earlier, which is about basically to get people to feel heard, help people to think better, and thirdly, to teach people how to listen. That's the three key areas. That's my primary focus. So that's why I specialize in this area. And what I've found is that the connections I'm making enable me to come in and support those organizations who are doing much bigger programs, but they need somebody to come in and be the specialist in the listening space. because, as you say, it's unusual, it's rare. We spend more time on presentations than we do on listening, and it's the number one thing. And in fact, Tom Peters, who you'll know as from way back, he says that he would, if he was running an MBA, the first 6 months would be strategic listening for everyone. You know,
It's so funny. When I guest on podcasts, people ask me what is the number one skill I recommend or encourage. I say it's listening. And it always throws people off.
yeah,
It's like, well, that's an interesting one, right?
yes,
Because you're thinking in sales, it's got to be, that you're unstoppable, you're a go-getter and so forth. But ultimately, the people that are going to provide the best relationships for the business are the ones that trust the salespeople the most and will keep buying. And that's a rarity, I think.
yeah. You know the selling business far better than me, and you know that's words of wisdom coming out of your mouth for sure. Yeah,
Well, thank you. This has been
agreed.
a real treat. I can't wait to get the book. I want to be a better listener. I know that my relationships are better with it. And I just want to ask one more question that just popped in my head was, what is a symptom that someone would have in business that a light bulb should go off and say, I need to contact this Colin Smith guy?
I would say that probably the number one is my relationships are not working.
Okay.
And I know that it's a good friend of mine who has little by little learned to listen to one of their friends more and more. And now that person is changing to become more interested in my friend because they've learned to listen. So they listened first, they listened always and always. And now that person feels heard enough to be able to listen to the other person. We're dying to be heard. It's a phrase I use a lot. We're dying to be heard. And just one brief story. Oprah, she says she's probably interviewed thousands and thousands of people, from prime ministers, presidents, prisoners, farmers, mothers, etc. And without fail, every one of them at the end of the interview leans across. So Obama was one of them and says, "Did I do okay? Was that all right?"
Mm.
So here we got people who are at the top of their careers and they still want to be validated. So now she makes sure, once she got that light bulb moment, said, how do I set out my intention is to validate each and every one of the people that I work with and I have on my show. We all need to be validated. It's
Yeah.
lovely. Now
Powerful.
you can see why I love this work.
Yeah. I just had
Yeah.
chills. It's just so awesome. Love it.
Thank you. Really.
Where can people find more of you, Colin? You're brilliant, and I love the conversation. So, if someone is struggling with the relationships and they can reach out to you, where can you be found?
So my website is dexteritysolutions.co.uk. That's DEXTERITY solutions, all one word. And the idea of dexterity was right hand. That was where that came from. But I'm on LinkedIn. If you look on LinkedIn as the listener, you'll find me. And I'd be very, very glad to speak to anyone. But I would add that when we talk about relationships, this isn't about counseling.
Mhm.
This is about helping you to learn to listen better. And it is, as our friend June talks about, it is a superpower without question. You can change someone without actually saying anything.
All right, we could go on for all day
Oh,
on
yeah.
that one.
Awesome. Thank you.
More to come. Follow this guy, ladies and gentlemen, Colin Smith, the listener on LinkedIn. Thank you, June Chang, for the introduction over the years. But this has been a blast, and I am up for working on my listening game. Thanks to you, Colin. It's been a real treat.
Yeah. Thank you, Harry. Really enjoyed it.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Sales Made Easy. If you found value in our conversations, please subscribe and leave a review. Our goal is to provide practical strategies for growing your business while staying true to your values. Remember, success in sales is about serving your clients. Serve first, and the selling will follow. We'll be back soon with more insights and inspiration. Until then, keep serving and providing value to others. Good things will happen.